Save South Africa convener Sipho Pityana addressed a gathering of civil society organizations in Johannesburg yesterday, reiterating his call for an end to state capture and calling on President Jacob Zuma to step down. Pityana also spoke about the need to break the corrupt relationships between business and politicians by demanding transparency around political party funding. He joins me in studio now. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News.
And your viewers.
You've said there can be no sustainable economic recovery with untrustworthy leadership in Treasury. Can you just elaborate on this?
Well, the fact of the matter is that you have a Minister of Finance who hails from being Minister of Public Enterprises. And we are at the heart of the crisis that emerges and is revealed in the Gupta leaks, in the Public Protector's report, and many other reports that speak to this so-called state capture. He is located right at the center of it all. The appointment of incompetent and unqualified boards, appointment of executives that seem to have been doing a bidding of a particular family, the transactions that have been going on there that have actually undermined governance in those institutions at great cost to the fiscus. And the allegations abound in terms of what that relationship, how that relationship manifested when he became Minister of Home Affairs. And certainly that casts a huge cloud over his head. To then thrust him and make him Minister of Finance to be in charge of the overall fiscus of the country is the most irresponsible thing to do. It does suggest that as a country that relies on attracting investment to drive growth and persuading international markets to invest in our economy, you don't have an ambassador in him who can do that, because his track record actually doesn't speak well of the kind of leadership that is required for that role.
You've also spoken about state-owned entities and how you think that all the boards must be gotten rid of and new people should come in. Will that not cause further ructions and further uncertainty with the investors and markets? Well,
I interact with the investors and markets all the time. And concern is about, if you look at the profile of most of state-owned enterprises, that's not how you typically constitute boards. The level of incompetence on those boards is a cause for great concern. You can't have leadership in those entities that doesn't have track record of actually having run significant and serious businesses. You have people with very little competency and hence the decisions that are taken there. And it's clear that they've been appointed for a mission other than ensuring effectiveness of those institutions, ensuring that they are efficient in what they do and delivering on policy. And that's why we're in the crisis that we're in. But you must remember that state-owned enterprises are a big factor in the South African economy. So the crisis in Eskom has a multiplier effect on the whole economy. A crisis in Transnet impacts the whole economy. It's not contained in those institutions alone. So the crisis in the economy, in part, has a lot to do with the crisis that we see in state-owned enterprises.
I want to move away from state-owned enterprises and come to the private sector. At the end of 2014, the Reserve Bank said there's about 1.35 trillion rands in cash reserves that businesses are sitting with and not spending in South Africa because of the same kind of issues that are being raised now. Yeah. Are we being too lenient on business? Instead of pushing them to say, you need to spend this money, you also need to help us revive the economy, and it cannot just be the onus on government alone?
Well, in an open democratic system, you can't quite force business to spend the money. So you have to persuade business to spend money. And one of the ways you do that, you show confidence of long-term plan of driving the economy. You have to demonstrate that there are opportunities to secure good returns on investments, etc., etc. And unless you're able to do that, you're not going to have business risk money and put in there. And that's where we are now. We have a crisis of confidence in the South African leadership in government. Because remember that business, by the way, came to the party in a conversation with government on National Development Plan. There are a number of things that some businesses were unhappy about around the National Development Plan, but felt that this at least is a basis to partner with government and with other stakeholders in society to be part of driving an agenda for growth, driving an agenda to create employment and reduce poverty, etc., etc. That plan is collecting dust in government offices. There is no enthusiasm to implement it. There is no reference to it in public policy statements that are being made. In fact, it looks like the key enthusiasts of the National Development Plan are stakeholders outside of government.
I know you're here in your SABC capacity, but something that's been making headlines with us is Anglo Gold is set to retrench 8,500 workers, especially in a climate like this where we're seeing a recession. Why is that happening? And perhaps people could say maybe you need to cut the chairman's salary or the CEO's salary and retain those people.
Well, I mean, let me start first with the issue about compensation. It certainly is the case that South Africa experiences wide gaps between the lowest paid and the highest paid. And we are sensitive to that. At Anglo Gold Ashanti, for instance, we do what you call enterprise Gini coefficient to measure what the gap is between the lowest paid person and the highest paid. And in conversation about how we compensate the most senior people, we take that into account. And that's one of the reasons why the board of Anglo Gold Ashanti for the past 3 years has not taken an increase in the fees of directors. And secondly, I think the CEO of Anglo Gold Ashanti is one of the leading figures in exercising restraint in terms of his salary package to set the tone about the importance of the need to close that gap. But those measures will never be adequate. You need to look at what it is that you need to do to lift the compensation for the lowest paid employees. That includes lifting their skills, enabling them to earn more for the work that they do, and all of that. And that's the exercise that we embark upon. Now, coming back to the issue about retrenchments, getting rid of employees that have contributed so much in building of this company over many, many years cannot be an easy task. So there is no decision to retrench 805. What happens in terms of the law, and this is the advantage with the South African labor system, is that you are obligated to make an announcement of your intention to proceed with that, and that you must engage openly with your employees through their representatives to scrutinize whether this is absolutely the only way in which you can salvage the company. And as part of that, we know that the employees have capacity to do this through their unions. They can employ whoever they want. But we believe that it's important that they should be satisfied, like management, that this is the only step to take. We have afforded them resources to employ experts of their own choice to inform decisions about what strategies are employed. So this is a journey of a conversation between management and employees. It will come to our board once there is a conclusion. It's not there yet. And certainly we'll want to make sure that loss of jobs is minimized as much as possible. It can't be easy to send people out to the streets in this kind of difficult environment, as you say so. But at the same time, there are instances where if you don't undertake this, there would be even greater losses because company itself would not be able to survive. But we have to come to that conclusion with our employees. The Department of Mineral Resources has been briefed about this. They also have their own experts who will scrutinize our numbers, and they will have to come to understand whether this is necessary or not. So this is a journey that will travel together. The fact of the matter is that South Africa is losing jobs across various sectors. The mining sector is going to do so particularly because we've been trying to say to the Department of Mineral Resources, we need to engage on setting a vision for the mining industry. We need to understand that this industry needs major restructuring in order to ensure that as a major job creating industry and as a major entity that attracts foreign currency for the South African economy, it is a sustainable industry. We're on our own. We're not having that conversation. There's a stalemate between a mining industry and the Minister of Mineral Resources.
Thank you very much for your time. Sipho Pityana joining us there live in studio. It's time for a short break. I'll be back with more business news after that. Do stay with us.